1x Developer Podcast.
As a step towards questioning how education is treated by society, let's begin by looking at the stereotype of the aimless youth. You probably know the type, or perhaps you even were the type. No clear path to the future, no concrete goals. These are the kids we're not supposed to imitate. To get your act together, you need to have a plan and a purpose, and then you're supposed to pursue it wholeheartedly. But aren't distant career aspirations themselves ambitious objectives? The steps from teenager honor roll to great inventor are anything but certain. If you begin life striving for a fancy future career and let this quest guide all of your choices, chances are that you'll sooner or later collide with a deception, as with any ambitious objective search. Sure, you might end up with a master's degree in engineering and a job at a respectable company, but if that's all you accomplish, then you're not the great inventor you started out dreaming to become. And at this point in the book, we have some idea why that is. It's not simply that the goal is difficult and that you didn't try hard enough. Instead, it's the more sinister problem of deception. The steps that lead to great invention aren't likely to resemble great invention. You are navigating by a false compass. At the same time, we've seen that often a search without objectives leads to more interesting results. Strangely, perhaps you might have come closer to the realm of great inventor, or great architect, or great composer, if only you had imitated the aimless youth after all. The aimless youth can play the treasure hunter, liberated to survey the stepping stones and choose the most interesting. Anyone whose path isn't fixed from the start can explore stepping stones and pursue those that they find most interesting in the moment. The aimless have the opportunity to smell the roses and consume knowledge broadly. That opportunity was lost on the overachiever, focused only on marking the next box on the checklist of life. That is from Why Greatness Cannot Be Planned, The Myth of the Objective. This is like not showing up at all on my camera. By Kenneth O. Stanley and Joel Lehman. Read this recently, found it really interesting, and wanted to talk about it on today's podcast. What do you think about that excerpt, Brendan?
I'm super into this. This is fascinating to me. I think in my younger days, I very much identified with the aimless youth, and so I have some thoughts on this.
Well, it really hit me. This is pretty. That part's like halfway through the book. I have a dog. What do they call that? Dog-eared.
Dog-eared, yeah.
Where you put the pay. Okay, dog-eared. Yeah. I have it dog-eared about halfway through the book, and it kind of hit me because I feel like I kind of followed the path of the overachiever, and then I feel like that's totally true, right? Like, the kids who kind of like followed the path they were supposed to, they do well in life, but they don't seem to become like Steve Jobs or anything like that,
Right.
But anyway, I read this book. It was a couple of weeks ago. So apologies if I like forget anything or misquote anything, but I just found it super interesting, dude. So I guess, like brief overview. These two writers, they're AI researchers. And this was written like before the days of LLMs, I think like 2014 or something, maybe. I remember I looked it up when I was reading it. But anyway, they're AI researchers, and they have a couple experiments that they talk about in depth where basically they came to this conclusion that training AI is rather than like trying to do the traditional route of like giving an objective and then kind of like telling it, yes, that's correct or that's false, to do this kind of unsupervised learning model of like trying to tell it to just do the most novel approach to the problem is the goal, basically. The absence of the goal is the goal in a way. So like they give this example throughout the book of like if you have like a pathfinding robot, right? So it's like in this maze and it's trying to get to the end of the maze. You can't just like, and this is just like a theoretical idea, but you can't just like tell it that the closer it gets to the objective, the more correct it was, right? Because any good maze has dead ends that lead right up to the one wall over from the objective, right?
Right.
So
So
if you
closer being
gauge,
just purely like distance from the end point is not the correct thing to measure.
right, and so what they found was by telling it to just do the most novel approach, like do the most different thing on each iteration whenever you reset the robot, do the most different thing from the last thing you did, that works better than any other approach to trying to get it at the end, any other reward system, basically. So like you set the robot up and it drives directly into a wall. So then from there, it's going to try to not drive directly into walls, and it's going to go in a completely different direction. And then it's going to, just try to do the most different thing each time. They found that actually works better than rewarding the robot by telling it like to just try to get as close to this objective or whatever. And so they kind of took this finding and they applied it broadly to just all ambitious objectives in life. They take this idea that like just trying to do the most novel, different thing is going to take you towards like a good outcome faster than any other approach. I feel like I already know like I'm going to sound like just a rambling maniac for this whole episode because like it's so hard to explain, and they explain it so well in the book. Like if you're interested in it, you really got to read it.
I want to clarify one thing real quick. When
Yep.
we say the myth of the objective, we're talking about objectives like goals, not when I hear that, I sort of think like that they're arguing against objective reality, right? That
Oh yeah, no, and also another like really big caveat that they harp on throughout the book is that it's really ambitious objectives that they're talking about, right? Like they do make it clear that realistic objectives, small objectives, like if you want to lose so many pounds this year, like your typical kind of New Year's resolution objectives, those are all good things still, right? Like yeah, set personal goals and go for them. They're talking more about things like I want to do something great with my life. I want to be a great composer. I want to be a great inventor, right? These kind of things, like from the excerpt. Those are things where there's no path. I mean, there is a path, but like there's no known path to those things, right? Like by definition, right? So to get to those things, you're better off just like doing whatever is novel and interesting to you.
Okay. I think here's my first question about this. Like if we talk about the maze and getting to the end point, when we say that we're purely doing like when we're purely taking the most novel approach, I feel like there's a certain amount of like human common sense that has to go with that, like maybe the most novel approach to doing the maze is to like draw lines through the walls or something like that, right? Like I just feel like there's lots of, if I want to be a great composer, one novel approach might be to sit at Denny's all day and drink coffee. It's like, has anyone ever tried that? You know what I mean? It's like there's a certain amount of like you just have to kind of like know or trust your gut or something that you're headed in the right direction towards these things. It can't just be like the most novel. I think has some caveats to it, right?
Well, yeah. So the novel first or novel, what do they call it? I think they call it novel first search approach. When you apply it to life, it's really two things. It's the novel and the interesting. And I find that like that I thought was really cool. Like just as kind of like a guiding principle for life, right? Because in that way it becomes okay, like it would be interesting to me maybe to like play video games all day and just play video games all day, but it definitely wouldn't be novel, right? Like, because it's the same thing I do every day, and there's lots of people who do that. And then also, like, it would be novel for me to quit my job and study ballet, but it wouldn't really be interesting to me. I don't really have interest in that, right? It's both of those things together that should be the guiding principle, right? So things that you find interesting and things that you find novel.
Yes. Okay. That's very good.
And also, I mean, it also like, so like in your example of like becoming a composer by drinking coffee all day, it's like, I feel like that's almost antithetical to the point of the book, right? Because you're not supposed to have a concrete objective like that, right? Like the objective of becoming a composer, that's an objective. That's like not the idea, right? You're supposed to try to just like, okay, so let me go back to this. The thing that that kind of sparked it is they had this this website where they would have like AI generated images, and what they would do is they would have like, they had this setup where users could come in and they would get like 8 generated images, and could like click one that they found interesting in some way, and then that would kind of guide the next mutation of the image, right? So by you saying, oh, I like this image that's like this, the next iteration would be more similar to that image in some way.
Okay.
And they would let the users do this however many times they wanted. And what they found was like people would come up with like really cool images. Like people had these like, and they're all in the book, but like people would come up with like an image of like a cool skull, or like an image of like a car, or like all these different things. And there was a lot there, right? So the main thing is, it's not just if you just generate a random image, it's just a random image. But in this way, there's like this kind of like it's being guided, but like you can't really articulate how it's being guided, and there's still this element of randomness to it. So it's this kind of like, I'm guiding it, but I can't really control it. Mm-hmm. And that kind of leads to these kind of interesting images. And one thing that they really that they pointed out that was really interesting is that nobody ever really, like the guy who made the picture of the car wasn't thinking about making a picture of a car when he started. He just kind of was like clicking like, oh, this looks kind of cool. Hey, this kind of looks like something. And then kind of was like, hey, this kind of looks like a car. And then he was like, okay, I'm done. I got a picture of a car. Right. So that's the approach that they're kind of talking about here, is like, I'm kind of feeling my way. Like, this is interesting. This is novel. I like this. And that's kind of like how you come up with like interesting, cool new things.
Okay. That's fascinating. I can already tell that I'm going to struggle with the concepts here, because like me, and I think a lot of people are used to thinking very goal oriented, right? Like that. I mean, that's kind of the point.
It is hard. It is hard. Like it'll hurt your head, like trying to kind of wrap your head around some of the way they articulate some things. And there's also like, I also don't want to be like overly. I don't want to like oversell the book. Like there's some things that I think are like kind of weird and don't really make sense to me. There's one part where they mention like, he talks about like this theoretical idea of like a furniture store that like allows users to like do a system like that, where they have like a randomly generated furniture or something, and then they're like they're selecting things they like about it, but then there's still this element of randomness. And that was like interesting to me, but to me it's like, no, I think like people who know how to make furniture should make the furniture, kind of thing, you know. That specific example was car. Me. Right, yeah, it's that was maybe that would work for like fabrics, you know, like when it comes to just like the aesthetic design of things. But yeah, I don't know. There's a, I'm trying to remember. There was like a couple parts in the book where I was like, I think you're missing me with that one. But in general, I find it really, really interesting.
But okay, so let's go back to, you want to do something great with your life, but the proposal in the book is that you don't really, like, that's as specific as you get with it. I want to do something great. I don't know what that is, and I'm just going to kind of follow whatever in my life is novel and interesting to me at the moment. I'm just going to follow those leads.
Yeah, yeah, and like that just is interesting to me because I've always felt that way. Like I've always felt like I want to do something really great, something really interesting, something that impacts people. But I don't know what it is, right? I don't know if it's like something I write or if it's like a podcast or if I ever make something great at all. So I guess the real thesis is that following the interesting and the novel is the best approach to achieving something great, right? Not necessarily that it will, but that it's the best way to get there.
The most likely way to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Because like in the experiment with the pathfinding robot, not every robot got to the objective, right? Some of them got stuck and confused and stuff. But the ones that did the novel based search were more successful than the ones that did the traditional objective search.
Interesting. Let me tell you about my personal journey with goals and stuff like that, because I think it's very relevant here, and it's very relevant to like how I'm thinking about this stuff. But like the quote that you gave at the beginning of the aimless youth, like, yeah, I very much identified with that in my younger days, and I really had no idea what I wanted to do or where I was going. And I went like that, I was doing just fine. Like I was holding down jobs and everything. But I really didn't like, I don't know. I would come home from work and just kind of like do whatever popped into my head that day. Right. And somewhere around when I was like 30, somebody introduced me to the idea of like productivity systems and stuff like that. And this idea of like setting goals and like working towards goals was hugely influential to me. I feel like it was a really like life-changing moment. Um, I think that's a big part of like why I'm struggling with this idea so much. Is like it was a real game changer for me. And I think the part that seems a little weird to me about this approach is that I think that setting goals and discipline go hand in hand. And I think that this idea of like just kind of following what's novel or interesting leads, in my experience, leads to this kind of lifestyle where you start a lot of things but don't really finish them. You don't really have like the practice discipline of showing up every day and like doing the hard work. Even when it's boring as shit, you still like show up because the goal is kind of what drives that behavior, right? It's important. I want to get to that thing, so I put up with the days that are boring. And if I just do what's kind of novel and interesting, I don't know, like I said, at least in my experience, it's just like things don't end up manifesting in the world because you don't put in the work for them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this, because I feel like it is like a pretty radical concept to me as well. And I don't know if they're like against the the discipline stuff. Like I had the same thought while I was reading the book, and it's just, I don't know. For me personally, what I've started to realize is that like, at least when it comes to like just like raw work ethic, like I know I'm gonna do stuff. Like I know I'm gonna be working on things, right? Like I've done before. I remember I told you I did a project once where I set a goal of I'm gonna work on this every day, and that one was really a failure because I found that I was meeting this goal of working on stuff every day, but I wasn't getting anything like actually productive daily. And I think it would have been better if I would have just allowed myself to just work. Like, I know I'm going to make time to work on things, right? So like I I think for me the interesting and novel approach probably works because I know I'm going to work on stuff. But I definitely have the fear about like not finishing anything, and that's something that like every developer has, right?
Yeah,
So
I think
I
so.
don't know. I wonder what the authors would argue in that case, because I definitely don't get the feeling that they're like against, you know, dedicating yourself to something or trying to finish something, right? Like they mentioned, like achievable goals are good, but it's like I wonder if like when you're near the end of a project or something, like do you think that you I wonder if like at that point the interesting and the novel is finishing the thing that you almost have done, right? I guess it's not
Hmm.
novel at that point anymore, but it's like I've definitely been there at that point with projects I've done, right? Where it's like I'm so close to the end that it's like, okay, I just got to get it done.
Yeah,
Like you have that
sure.
inertia there. But that was another thing that tripped me up. At I think a number of times in the book they mentioned the Wright brothers as examples
Hmm.
of uh, this kind of interesting and novel approach leading to like a great achievement. And I find that really interesting because I think of the Wright brothers, you know, the story that I've always been told. I think of that as a story of just pure dedication, really, right? Like the story is that they did, you know, 100 something different iterations or whatever, trying to make this thing work, and they just didn't give up, and that was kind of how they managed to do it.
Hmm.
So I find that kind of interesting. Like I do feel like there's a little bit of friction there conceptually as part of like getting things done. Like any great achievement, there was at some point there was a guy who or a girl who was like, yeah, we got to get this damn thing done, you know, like
Right. We're going to
for
build a
sure.
plane. We need to fly.
Yeah, yeah,
Even if we fail 100 times, we're going to, yeah, like that seems like a case where there's a goal and a lot of dedication and a lot of work.
yeah.
But, and
But I
maybe,
guess it was an achievable goal at the point that they were at. I guess
right. I'm kind of curious about this, this like kind of difference in kind that you're talking about between achievable and what's the opposite of that? What are these big, what do they call these big life goals that are like,
they call them ambitious objectives.
okay. And ambitious objectives, but they're not goals. Like,
Well, no,
how do I
the
decide
ambitious
on an
objectives are
ambitious
the things that
objective?
we avoid. The ambitious objectives are the things that we don't want to do. The
Okay.
achievable ones are the ones that we're good with.
We avoid ambitious objectives. Hmm. And do they talk at all about like at what point? I don't know. At what point it crosses over? The kind of definitive line is that it's you can do it in the short term.
Yeah, I don't think they really. I think they probably intentionally left it kind of up to the reader as to
Okay.
what that is.
Because I just wonder about
One thing,
something that
another,
takes years to accomplish. There are definitely
right.
things if I want to play the piano really really well, it's
Oh
going to take
yeah,
me years to do that.
yeah, for sure. And that's another question I have. Kind of is like, okay, I mean, you know, yeah, to be like a professional athlete is an ambitious objective for anyone, and but the people who do it, like, no one really just like stumbles into the NBA. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like
Yeah.
you were playing basketball competitively from a very early age. You've been dedicated to it your whole life, right? So like there's definitely specific instances where like this approach doesn't work. And they did actually and I remember they did mention that any objective or like anything that has like very clear constraints, this doesn't really apply to. Like chess doesn't really work in like the novel based search doesn't really work for chess, because chess is like a game where all like all the moves are constrained, right? Like there's a limit of how many things can be done. It is astronomically huge, that the number of variations, but they're all like, like, the pawn can become a queen, but the pawn can't like turn into a dragon. Like there's knowns of what can happen, right? So a
Yeah.
chessboard isn't something where the novel based approach really applies. So I guess that's how they would kind of explain away like the professional sports thing, is that it's a situation where the paths are kind of known. They're just really hard.
That makes sense. Yeah. So this is more like things like, yeah, music, where you could really take, there aren't necessarily really any rules. Like breaking rules and novel approaches to music are really like how the medium moves forward.
Yeah, or like building an airplane, where I mean, like in retrospect, there's a clear path, right? But at the time, it was like nobody knew how to do it. It had never been done before, so it was just trying anything that seemed interesting and novel was a viable way to approach it.
Okay. That I feel like that narrows it down a bit. Um that rules out, I don't know, quite a lot of stuff, I think. Although I
Yeah.
don't know, we talked in a previous podcast about who's the guy who just decided to do the pole vaulting backwards, the flop.
Oh yeah, the Fillsbury flop.
Yeah,
Fillsbury.
sometimes there's novelty even in professional sport.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I think
Um,
that that's a big kind of asterisk to the whole thing. Is like, I think there's quite a lot of things where we kind of know how to do it, and to get really good at it is just a matter of dedication. We're talking more about things where there's not really a right answer. It's not just who can run the fastest or like something like that. It's you want to come up with a whole new way of making art or something like that.
right. Well, I mean, it's when you've embraced like that the objective is a myth, then uh, you'll never achieve any objectives, right? Like the idea is that like you'll end up somewhere that you're happy with, right? Like the example of the images, right? People clicked around the images until they found something cool, and I think that's how you have to think about it, right? Like it's not like you can't say, oh, I want to like create really great art, so I'm going to do interesting and novel things to create. Like it's you do the interesting and novel things, and then you end up with cool new art or like some totally different thing you didn't expect. But the hope is that you'll stumble upon something that's cool, right?
Yeah. That's a very, I don't know, that's a very interesting idea, and I think very contrary to what a lot of um what a lot of people would recommend as a I don't know, a path forward for like I don't know, a way to construct your life, I guess.
Okay, so I want to read one other section that I have dog eared. Uh, okay, just consider how often we're asked to justify our actions against the supposed ideal of, quote, being objective. If your boss or your parent thinks the justification for your choice is merely subjective, it will take a strong argument to escape that accusation. And what one person perceives as interesting is easily pegged by others as subjective. The fact that there are so many ways to criticize such choices highlights how easy it is to dismiss them. They're unscientific, unprincipled, biased, emotional, or even irrational or irresponsible. You aren't going to win over your boss simply because your ideas feel interesting to you. But the irony you can take from this book is that following just those kinds of gut feelings is often arguably more principled than being objective, especially when pursuing discovery or innovation. And this argument is not merely based on our feelings or personal preferences. Maybe it could have been dismissed as mere feel good speculation if it were presented in isolation. But we've now seen an entire book of examples in which ignoring objectives led to better results than following them. Of course, there will always be exceptions. Some objectives are more modest, and others may sometimes require objective based assessment. But the point is that following the scent of interestingness is justified precisely because we don't know the structure of the search space. There is no way to know what new discoveries or ideas will later enable. They could be stepping stones to anywhere.
I like that. I struggle with that a lot, where it's like something is interesting, but I don't pursue it because, like, if someone were to press me on it about why I find it, why do you find that interesting? Why do you want to do that? It's like, I don't know. It sounds kind of neat.
Oh, for sure. And that was another reason why I wanted to bring this up, because lately I've been exploring different programming languages and trying to like figure out like what projects I want to work on. And every time I go through this, there's always this voice in my head that's like, "Oh, you need to learn that new JavaScript framework because that's what everybody's talking about," or like, "You need to learn this." Right now it would be like vibe coding LLM tools or whatever, right? Like, you need to be doing that. But after reading this, I'm like, no, I don't. Right? I should do what I find interesting and what would be novel to me, right? Which might be learning APL or uh, some functional programming language, or some project that's like just completely disconnected from anything I've ever done before. So I'm trying to kind of embrace that more. And I gotta say, one thing that's interesting is I've felt this kind of calm that came over me as I've embraced this.
Hmm.
Uh, this might be totally a me thing. I don't think it is, but like I get like kind of stressed out even just with like my hobbies sometimes, because I start thinking of like I start coming up with these objectives or like these ideas of these things that I'm supposed to do. Like I'll be like I'll decide, oh, I need to listen to this artist's entire discography. I have to do that, right? Like this is a thing that I'm supposed to have done. Like you can't really know music until you've listened to every album by this band or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that's so dumb. Like that's not like I should do what's interesting and novel, right? I should go listen to jazz because I don't know much about jazz and I think it sounds interesting, right? Like that's what I should do. And I've been trying to embrace that with a lot of my just personal stuff and hobbies and stuff. And I gotta say, it just feels good. Um, I do worry about never finishing anything, though. That does seem to be a problem. But I mean, I guess you could just make the argument that if I don't finish something, it just wasn't that interesting. Maybe that's all it is.
Yeah, I'm super curious how that approach goes over time. If over time that feeling of like jumping from thing to thing and not finishing things kind of like weighs on you, or if you maintain that sense of calm and you like eventually those do become stepping stones, like the thing said, that little bit of Haskell you learned ends up unveiling some new path to some new programming project, and that you really get into and are so excited and motivated by it that you finish it.
Yeah, and the stepping stones idea is like the whole. That's a recurring motif throughout the book. That's like the whole idea is like uncovering as many stepping stones as you can get, and then you can kind of start finding paths towards something that seems like really phenomenal.
I like that a lot. um yeah, yeah, I really am curious how that goes for you. Maybe I'll try it.
Yeah, maybe. Um, yeah, but it is that hesitancy that you kind of had with the idea is like I still have it a little bit, but it was something I was fighting like throughout the whole book, right? Like this, it just seems like the objective stuff is like just so ingrained into like everything in our culture, in our lifestyles, and everything that it just it feels almost wrong to be like, yeah, I'm just gonna do. Well, so, here's something interesting. Like, I was a couple of years ago, I was like learning violin a little bit, And I was like just doing it in my spare time just for fun. And I told some people that I was I was doing that, and there was a few people that I told that to, and they were like, "Oh, that's so cool! You can like do weddings or whatever." And I'm like, something about like just the fact that you like put this objective monetary kind of attachment to it is just like almost ruined the whole thing, honestly.
Mm.
Like, and when I think back at things I really enjoy, or when I just look at things I really enjoy, they tend to be things that I don't have objectives with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like music, like uh, writing comic books, like things that I just do. Like I don't really pay attention to like what other people are reading much. I just kind of like I go on Amazon and I just like put stuff on my wish list if it sounds interesting. And I think that's why I really love reading, because I don't like I just read what I want to read. I don't really think about anything else.
Yeah. I
No.
think I think that's a huge um I don't know if it's like hustle culture or whatever, but
Yeah,
that
I think that's
that
part of it.
constant thing of having to monetize every interest, every hobby you have, and turn it into something. Like it's it can be really difficult just to do something just just because just because it's interesting, just because it's novel.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I the, the the thing about finishing projects, I'm a little bit on the fence about, because I do think that's like a deep seated thing within us. I think there's something about finishing, about like actually bringing something into the world, right? Like, uh, I can do this project and now I say it's done and now it's in the world. So either I can use it or somebody else can use it somehow. Like I think that's something very human. I think it gives meaning to our lives. But I also wonder how much of that is, yeah, part of this like hustle culture. How much of that is culturally ingrained, that's like kind of checking off boxes, like he was talking about at the beginning of the book,
Yeah.
in the first quote you read. It's like sometimes it that kind of like drains meaning instead of giving it meaning. That kind of like drains meaning out of our lives when we reduce everything to just like a checkbox.
Yeah. I always wonder, like, do you know what Letterboxd is?
It's the
Do you use
movie site.
Letterboxd?
I don't.
Yeah, but it's like people like catalog what movies they've seen and they like review all of them and stuff.
Hmm.
And like people who are really into it, they have like this full catalog of like every movie they've ever seen with a rating and a review and stuff. And if you enjoy that, that's great. That can be. I can totally see how that can be fun. But it definitely seems to some people, in some cases, that it's like almost like they're turning their hobby into like a job. And even though there's no like monetary, like realistic, tangible, like objective there, I almost feel like making it a goal oriented job sounds like, are you like robbing yourself of something in that way? You know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think I think there's a lot of things like that we kind of like turn into, I don't know, in our attempt to do the best we can. And I don't know, like it's tough because we do want to do the best we can and we want to attain mastery over things,
Yeah.
right? That's important, and that is can be fun. But I know exactly what you mean. There's a lot of people who do that with a lot of things, and I'm guilty of that myself sometimes, where it's just like
Oh yeah.
stop being fun. And now it's just like now it's strangling all the life and the fun out of it. It's just like now it's just like a job.
Yeah. I've totally done that. But I do wonder, like, is there a point where that's like what you have to do to be really good at something? You know, like going back to the kind of the professional athlete idea, like is is the sport still fun after that many hours of doing it? Probably not. There's definitely an element of those people like just making themselves do it.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest lessons in life, unfortunately, is that like if you want to do something and do it well, not every day is going to be fun. You're not going to feel like doing it every day. You're not, it's at some point, I don't know. It's not that it loses all of its fun, but it does. If you want to get really good at it, I think you have to treat it like a job, and you can't just give up on it and not do it because something else catches your interest. And that's sort of the thing about the interesting and novel aspect of it is like, I do think that you can get caught in this thing of like, ooh, new shiny thing, and you like run over and do that other thing, and you lose the not only the results of the thing, but also the character building that comes with like showing up for a thing day after day, and even when it's kind of boring and it's not really fun anymore.
I wonder if like the thing is that the novelty search works until you find the great thing, and the trick is like you need to identify like, yeah, this is the great thing that I have to do.
That's kind of,
which is how could you ever know?
I think that on like books I've read about how to stick with stuff. I'm thinking of Stephen Pressfield has a book that's not The War of Art, but it's a different one. I forget what it's called. I think it's called Do the Work or something like that. That's influencing a lot of the ideas I'm talking about here. But yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that. Got lost.
No, I feel like I know. I kind of like get what you were saying there, like it. But I mean, I don't know, like, yeah, like the thing that's most novel to me today is the thing that I was not working on yesterday, right?
Yeah.
But like working on the same thing every day is like a good thing to do. And so, yeah, I'm kind of in that. I'm grappling with that a little bit right now, even just with like I was talking about trying to find like the next software project to work on, where I have like half finished things to do. Like, should I go back to those, or should I just start the new thing? Should I like, I don't know. But one thing I think a lot about though is one of the interviews we did on this podcast with Corey House. I asked him like, what was the thing that what was the driving thing with learning React? Was it like because you saw that this was like the future? Did you like see that there was a lot of money in this? Did you see like this, that there was just this, this is where things were headed? Or was it more of just an interesting thing? And he said, yeah, I just thought it was interesting. Yeah. And I think about that a lot. Like, it sounds like a little bit of this philosophy worked for him, at least in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you don't want to be stuck doing something and like dedicating your life to something that you're not interested in. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's what can happen if you don't pursue interesting and novel things at all, I think, is if you just end up like doing the daily grind on something that you don't give a shit about. Like, that's terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, don't do that. I think it's interesting you brought up the War of Art too, because I was reminded of that book while I was reading this. And at first I thought of it as kind of like almost an antithesis to this, right? Like, because that book is very much about hard work, driving towards getting something done, right? He talks a lot about how like, I remember there's a part in that book where he talks about like once you finish one book, it's like the next book needs to be started immediately, right? You just need to be like, he talks about working every single day, being a professional, working all day, every day. But also, I remember there's distinctly that there's a some part in that book where he mentions that he talks about the muse and how it kind of inspires you and stuff. And he mentions, and I'm definitely deeply paraphrasing here, but like he was kind of saying that it doesn't really, you don't need to worry so much about the project. Like you don't need to worry so much about what it is you're writing. He says that as you put the time in, things will kind of naturally form into the form that they're supposed to be in. Like he mentions that as you write a play, it will kind of naturally take this shape of this like 3-act structure, right? Or like as you write a novel, it will naturally develop, or as you write, like you will start to get a novel length writing, and it will kind of naturally start to follow this like rising action and fallen action, and like you don't need to focus so much on like these structural things, or like what's the name of this thing. I remember he also mentions that, like he says that if your project has a name before you're working on it, that's like a red flag. Like that's a bad sign, because your project is taking precedence over the action of working, kind of is the idea.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like that part is pretty similar in a way. Like it's just, I guess both of them have this element of like faith to them, right? Of like you work on the thing that is interesting to you, and that will turn into, for Stephen King, it turns into a novel. For Stanley Kubrick, it turns into a movie. Like that, it just kind of works.
That's really interesting. That's a really interesting like pairing together of two things that don't seem on their surface like they would go together. Maybe part of the problem for me is that following what's interesting in novel, to me, sounds antithetical to the discipline that he's describing in The War of Art, right?
It does, yeah.
To me, those feel at odds with each other. Interesting in novel means I kind of get up and I do what I feel, and The War of Art is prescribing this like artists,
Yeah.
writers, whatever, have a ritual. You do the process, and eventually the thing comes out.
Right.
But maybe that's just like, those are just my hangups. Maybe those are just baggage that I'm bringing to the words interesting and novel. Maybe there is. I get up, I have discipline, and I follow what's interesting and novel, and that is the process. And you have faith that in the end, something comes out of that.
Right. I almost think it's maybe like the novelty search works within the context of like it needs to be in the frame, not like maybe to your whole life, but in the framework of this thing, right? Like I'm sitting down to write, and then in that framework, I'm writing what's interesting and novel to me. That definitely
Yeah.
sounds like a good writing principle, like a good creative principle, right? And I mean that's kind of like the guiding principle of this podcast, right? We 100% it is, right? We have no real objectives here other than like, what do we want to talk about? What do we think would be interesting to talk about? Hey, this guy reached out to us. He wants to do an interview. Let's interview him. Like that's very much how we've done this.
That's true. I
And
didn't think about that. That's true.
it's been fun. I definitely feel like we've accumulated stepping stones, if nothing else, right? Like
Yep.
I don't think, if it wasn't for this podcast, I would have no idea what APL was.
Yeah. And I think it's remained fun. It's remained like loose and fun because I think we don't, um, we don't make a checklist out of it and all that stuff. We kind of just pursue whatever's interesting to us in the moment.
Yeah, but we do have like uh not rituals, but we have a release structure that we came up with that worked for us. We have like routines. We have kind of a way of doing things that we're always trying to enhance.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe that's what I mean by like thinking they're at odds, but maybe they're not really. It's like we do have a bit of discipline for the podcast. We show up every couple weeks and we record, and like we're doing the thing that needs to be done to get the work done. The interesting and novel part is really just like within the content of the podcast. We're kind of like searching for interesting and whatever's piquing our interest at the moment.
Maybe that's what it is. Because that same thought kind of crossed my head of like, if I just wake up in the morning and I think what's interesting and novel for me to do today, it's like, I want to go scuba diving. I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
that's not a guiding principle for your life.
I'm super interested to read this book. You sold me. I mean, this I think just the fact that I can just tell from our conversation about the book here that like it's really going to challenge me. It's going to I think I'm going to have a lot of questions like you did during the book, that things that don't immediately sit right. And I think that's probably a good sign that you're reading something that's important.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of books that are like in, I don't know if this is really, I actually don't know what like genre this is, because it's not like a self-help productivity book, or it's computer science actually, which is kind of weird. Makes sense, but it's kind of weird.
Philosophical computer science.
Yeah. But like you when you talk about productivity and that sort of stuff, I feel like a lot of the books are kind of saying the same thing, right? It's like, oh, you gotta work hard, you gotta work harder than everybody else.
Yep.
You just gotta have the idea, man. You just gotta have the right idea, you know. You know.
Yep. 100%. A lot of rehashing of ideas in the self-help space / productivity space.
Yeah. Wow. All right. Objectives owned. We're done.
Myth busted.
All my homies hate objectives.
Yep. Never again. Not setting any more objectives for the rest of my life.
Is that, would you say you have an objective to never set any objectives?
Damn it. Got me again.
There we go. A Jedi never speaks in absolutes.
Man, yeah, this whole thing's starting to feel very zen.
1X Developer Podcast.
Hey everybody, this is Collin. First and foremost, I want to thank you all for listening to this episode of the 1X Developer Podcast, and let you know that if you have any questions, comments, or if you just want to tell us about your day, you can reach us at X, formerly known as Twitter, at 1X Developer Podcast. We're also on YouTube at 1X Developer Podcast. You can email us if you're weird at 1xdeveloperpodcast at protonmail.com. And lastly, don't forget to follow, subscribe, all that stuff, so you don't miss any further episodes of the 1X Developer Podcast. Thanks so much. See you next time.